McDonald, and welcome to this edition of DCV TV's Meet the Rainmakers. Today we're on the show floor of Modex 2018 in Atlanta, and we're joined by Barb Ivanov, who's the director of the Urban Freight Lab, which is part of the Supply Chain, Transportation, and Logistics Center at the University of Washington. Barb is a national thought leader in solving freight system problems where the public and private sector spheres of control overlap. And that, of course, is the topic of our discussion today. Barb, thanks very much for joining us and taking the time. It's good to see you. Got to ask right up front, what is the Urban Freight Lab?
The Urban Freight Lab is a structured work group. Okay. The members are private companies, really driven by retail. So Nordstrom's, Charlie's Produce, wholesaler of foods and goods, as well as UPS and USPS, delivery firms.
Sure.
So those are the founding members.
Okay.
We partner with the City of Seattle's Department of Transportation because they have the authority, the stewardship of the public right-of-way, whether that's the street, arterial, the sidewalk, the curb space, the alley space. And so they've got a lot of power and authority over how things function in what we call the final 50 feet.
Yep, and that relates to the overlapping spheres you discussed.
Absolutely. You cannot solve the delivery problems in the final 50 feet without all the process owners engaged, again, and actually working to achieve goals.
It was a perfect setup for the next question because I've been looking forward to this because I wanted to ask. We've been talking for years about the last mile. Up until the point where I was preparing for our conversation here today, I was not familiar with the term the last 50 feet. Are they different? Are they the same term for the different concept? Where do they come together?
The last mile as a concept typically refers to the movement of goods from the distribution center, maybe out in the exurbs, to final point, right? Final 50 feet is a piece of that our members are telling us could occupy up to 60% of the time of that whole last mile movement. So it's very significant in terms of time and cost.
Particularly in urban areas, is that the focus or is that anywhere?
It is in urban areas, although I'm sure it could apply elsewhere, but we're looking primarily at major urban centers, big cities in the United States. We work with partners in the EU, so we're in conversations with the New York City DOT freight people, Washington DC freight people, but our core partner, who's actually open to change and innovation, is the Seattle Department of Transportation. So I want to give a shout out to those guys.
Absolutely.
If it wasn't for their interest in actually solving problems, we'd have nowhere to go.
Tell us about some of the problems that are on the docket that you're looking at, trying to move the ball forward on this topic.
Right. So our members decided what is the sweet spot? What are those priority goals that we want to achieve as a group? Number one is we want to reduce the amount of time the truck spends in the load-unload zone when they pull up in that final 50 feet. So let me define what we mean by the final 50 feet. It starts where the truck stops. And that could be at the curb in a commercial vehicle load zone, could be under a building in a private loading bay or dock, or it could be, if you still have an alley system left in your city, actually in the alley. And then we actually quantify the series of activities, the process flow, from that truck load-unload zone through the streets, through the intersections, as the delivery person maneuvers, maybe through the sidewalks, enters a building, has to pass through security to make sure they're allowed to enter the building, and then they go floor to floor, door to door on the freight elevator, trying to make final delivery of goods. So that's the final 50 feet, and then of course the exit path back to the truck itself.
It's fascinating because it's yet another step toward even getting more granular and understanding the process and how it's managed. 15 years ago, it was, the truck will be here. We gave them a 4-hour window. They're usually within that, but it sort of came when it was going to come. Now we've been measuring all the various transit times, the activities, the segments, and so on and so forth. What do you hope to make better from your work at the Urban Freight Center?
Well, those two goals. So, we stay focused on our goals, which are measurable and crisp. Again, in terms of key findings, I can tell you that our research has shown some very surprising things to the city itself and, again, to some of the retailers that we're working with. Number one, and this is a big, significant issue, is that the amount of time you spend in that load unload zone is not determined by any activity on the street or the city. It is 100% controlled by the building owner, the developer, and maybe the architecture, the firm they hired, and the current management. So if I'm going to get you out of that parking space in 15 minutes that it is signed, okay, I've got to change the way you do your work in that building, in that 70-floor office tower, in that retail center. I can continue to, and a lot of cities actually do, they use enforcement as their only weapon to make sure that you'll move along. And you can give somebody tickets all day long. But if it takes an hour to do their work in the building, and you've got a 15-minute unload zone, you can't change behavior by offering them a ticket. And the purpose of enforcement is to change behavior, not just to collect funds, right?
Now, I can see where building management, building occupants, architects, if there's going to be a lot of outbound shipping from a building, seeing an advantage in paying attention to that. But if you're just building an office building, and all that's going to be happening is you're going to be taking stuff in, that's not your cost, it's really not your issue. How do you motivate them to pay attention to things like that?
Yeah, so two ways. Let's talk about an office building, for example. The inbound is usually office supplies or maybe new computers, and frankly a lot of reconstruction that goes on. And again, we document it, and people don't often think about. We're tearing things up and putting in new suites all the time. So in that area, the building manager or developer has provided some sort of area. Okay, if it's the lobby of the building where the parcels are collected by concierge or maybe a security group, and what are they supposed to do with it when you've grown e-com 15% year over year over year for the last 10 years? And we anticipate it will continue to grow at an even faster rate because now you're opening up food, you're opening up not just dry goods, but cold as well. So you in your office just ordered lunch, and it's coming to you in a bento box. In fact, the actual number of deliveries has increased significantly. And what that means is for the building manager, as well as the city, as well as the delivery person, is you're throwing a lot more truck trips on the system than you did before, because we live in on-demand world, right? So again, somehow, if you're going to store those parcels or those packages or your lunch, we need to figure out how to create density of delivery in that tower itself to enable the delivery driver to get their work done much more quickly. We also want to do that in a way that solves this, I keep trying to deliver to your floor, but you're not there. Because nobody these days has an admin who's sitting there all day long doing nothing but receiving parcels, right? They get up and do other jobs. Or maybe the signature authority is stepped away and is in a meeting. Plus people nowadays, maybe even you, in your office tower are ordering your shoes to go to your office because they'll steal them if they're on your porch at home, right? So there's a tremendous rise in demand at the same time that, and change in demand, that is now a 1 hour or a 2 hour order, not a 2 or 3 day from now order.
You know, I made a conversation actually here at Modex this year. We're having a conversation about the customer. And it occurred to me in the conversation, the way it was going is, and I think where you're going is spot on, it also doesn't just have to be businesses, right? It could be residential towers, it could be anywhere, because the comment I made was, you know, e-commerce has made everybody a logistician. Then the person said, what do you mean? I said, well, isn't your home a receiving department? Don't you receive goods with great frequency now directly delivered to your home? And they're like, yeah. So all these factors are, this concept is among so many things that are fascinating in logistics. What's next? How does the work continue? Where's it going?
So after we collected original data, we've analyzed that data, and we did some modeling of potential scenarios. We're now pilot testing real promising solutions on the street. So in the Urban Freight Lab at UW, we're committed to making sure that it's more than a theory. We actually want to see what happens and not just what happens in terms of the particular goal, again,
Yep.
reducing final failure of those final delivery attempts and dwell time, but seeing whether or not participants in this system will adopt it. So, you know, we're working with parcel vendors,
Right.
locker systems, smart locker system vendors, and what they say is the wave of the future is, as you know, free delivery is not free. Right. It's really expensive to deliver to your front door, to your porch, every one of those. So the whole system has to learn how to cut those costs.
Yeah.
And we believe, after analyzing, as I said, both the security, which takes 12% of the time that the delivery person is spending in that tower, as well as that floor-to-floor, door-to-door delivery, which
Yep.
takes over 60% of the time.
Yep.
That adds up to over 70% of the work time in that building. If you put, and we're testing this idea, after analysis, we're actually testing in the Seattle Municipal Tower a common carrier locker system. Okay, not testing whether smart lockers work. We're
Right.
testing whether people will actually use a common carrier system. A common carrier, by definition, means any retailer. Okay, and any delivery firm can use it without any concern about proprietary data
Yep.
being improperly exchanged, right? And so, will the tenants actually find in an office tower, in this example, that that's a convenient solution?
Yeah, will they embrace that
Yeah,
approach?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Is it better for me, if I'm working in that building, not to have to get out of a meeting, rush out to the door of my office and sign for a package? I can go collect it off hours whenever I feel like picking
Right.
it up. So we're testing whether it actually works for all of the parties that may have benefit.
This is fascinating stuff.
Yeah.
I love the conversation. We need to wrap, but I have a sense there have been some folks watching who might be interested in a little bit more information.
That'd be awesome.
Where can we point them?
Point them to the Urban Freight Labs
Okay.
website, number one. So Google
Urban
Urban
Freight
Freight Lab,
Labs.
University of Washington.
Okay.
Just one lab, singular, Urban Freight Lab at the University of Washington. You will find us. And again, my name's Barb Ivanov.
Okay.
Feel free to send me an email. It's on the website.
Wonderful. Thanks again so much for the
Thank
time.
you.
I loved it.
Take care.
Travel safe.